Democratic hypocrisy on government spending. USAID versus Pete Hegseth's $49,000 paint job. The uproar over a $49,900 emergency paint job for a government home assigned to former Fox News host and Army veteran Pete Hegseth exposes a glaring double standard in Democratic scrutiny of government spending. While House Democrats Reps. Rosa DeLauro, D. Con, and Reps. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, D. Flaw, are demanding answers on Hegseth's housing expenses, they remain notably silent about the billions of taxpayer dollars funneled through USAID, United States Agency for International Development, to foreign governments and NGOs, often with little oversight and questionable returns for American taxpayers. The manufactured outrage over Hegseth's housing expenses. Hegseth, set to occupy a government-provided home, became the latest target of Democratic criticism after reports surfaced that renovations to the 4,000-square-foot residence included an emergency paint job costing $49,900, exceeding the $35,000 threshold for maintenance without additional congressional notification. In a letter questioning the justification for the expenditure, DeLauro and Wasserman Schultz asked about rent payments and comparisons to past secretaries of defense. This level of scrutiny over a single housing expense appears particularly performative, considering that military housing for high-ranking officials is not uncommon. Former Defense Secretary Robert Gates resided in government housing, paying $6,500 monthly for a historic 19th-century residence in Washington, D.C. The controversy, therefore, seems less about the cost and more about targeting a conservative figure appointed under a Republican administration. USAID, the real spending scandal. While Democrats express concern over a $49,900 expense, USAID, a government entity primarily controlled by Democratic administrations, spends billions annually under the guise of foreign aid, often with minimal accountability. In 2022 alone, USAID's budget surpassed $29 billion with massive allocations sent to foreign nations, many of which are rife with corruption, human rights abuses, or anti-American sentiment. Key examples of USAID's wasteful spending. 1. Ukraine aid and the black hole effect. Since the onset of the Russia-Ukraine war, USAID has directed more than $13 billion to Ukraine for economic assistance. Reports from independent watchdogs, including the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, SIGAR, have warned that similar spending in war-torn regions often leads to mismanagement, fraud, and little accountability. 2. Funding LGBT programs overseas. USAID has allocated millions of dollars toward promoting LGBT activism in countries with deeply conservative cultures. For instance, in Pakistan, where homosexuality is illegal, USAID awarded $1.5 million to empower LGBTQ+ communities, despite the U.S. having little control over how those funds are used. 3. Afghanistan and the Ghost Soldiers scandal. Before the fall of Kabul, USAID and other U.S. agencies poured over $145 billion into Afghanistan, much of it wasted. The Afghan government, propped up by U.S. funds, famously paid ghost soldiers, non-existent troops whose salaries were pocketed by corrupt officials. 4. Foreign infrastructure projects. While U.S. cities decay. USAID has invested billions in infrastructure projects abroad, including $500 million for roads in Haiti and $200 million for sustainable energy programs in Africa. Meanwhile, back home, cities like Baltimore, Chicago, and San Francisco suffer from crumbling infrastructure, homelessness, and rampant crime, issues that Democrats claim they care about. Double standards, targeting conservatives. While ignoring billions in waste, the outrage over a government-funded paint job, while USAID burns through billions, exposes Democratic lawmakers' sheer hypocrisy. Their concern over wasteful spending seems only to apply when a conservative is involved. If Democrats were genuinely concerned about fiscal responsibility, they would investigate the tens of billions sent overseas with little oversight rather than a one-time domestic housing expense. Instead of questioning why a government home is being repainted, the real question should be, why are American taxpayers funding corruption-riddled foreign governments while their own country faces economic turmoil, rising national debt, and crumbling infrastructure? Conclusion: The selective outrage over Pete Hegseth's housing expense is a textbook case of political theater. While Democrats nitpick a $49,900 paint job, they ignore the tens of billions wasted annually through USAID and other government programs that provide little benefit to the American people. If DeLauro and Wasserman Schultz want to investigate wasteful spending, they should start with their own party's reckless foreign aid policies, not a paint job on a government home.